Hello and welcome to block 3 and block 40. I'm just going to do a little bit of paper piecing to refresh and also to help out some of the new people that have joined us in March. So we're going to start with block 3. Here's the pattern. And here is the original blocks made in the old fabrics. So this is the part we're going to paper piece because we're going to also do a square and a square, but we'll do a square and a square on block 40 as well. So this is the section I want to talk about in this video, but we'll do the whole block. And then we've got block 40, again, a very simple pattern with just a square and a square there. And there's the colors from the original. Okay, so to get this started, I've taken block 40, and you will have your paper pieced segments from Marg. I do mine beforehand, so I just cut mine, and I've added a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. So that's going to be my paper for the foundation paper piecing that we're going to do. And I've already lined up all my fabrics here in the order that they're going to go, so that's going to help me out. Then I have on the outside borders just some red with gold corners, and we can do that after the blocks together, and we can do add those at the end. Here is block, so that's block 40. This is block 3. So block 3, I've already started the center. Let's have a look at the pattern again. I've already started the center, and I just need to add the corners of the gold, of the green. So they are here, and we'll work on that. Then we have these sections, which are from the tops, the bottom, and then I've cut two from the sides. So because I already cut out this center section on my other pattern that I'm using my papers for, I gave myself a 1/4 inch on this one for the bottom. But on this one, I'd already cut that section out, so I didn't have a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to just bear in mind as I sew this that I need to add a 1/4 inch, and that will explain itself a little bit more as we go through. So on block 3, we have the center and then those 4 sides, which are a little bit more complex, and we're going to paper piece those. So again, I've lined up all my fabrics. So the gold on top, the green, the pinks, and the other green. Now, in something like this, the first thing you might wonder is, what block should I start with? Well, luckily Marg has also coordinated all these so you know what to go with. So I'm going to start with the block. Let's take a fresh one. Right here in the center, this green. And I'm going to add this one and this one, which are pink. And then I'm going to add this one, which is gold, and I'm going to add those two, which are the green. And again, I don't have any 1/4 inch on these sides, and I don't have any 1/4 inch seam allowance on the top. So I'll have to remember to make sure my fabric covers that. And if you look at the ones I've already done, so this is one of the sides, you'll see that I've got good coverage there and good coverage here. And if you hold it up to the light, I hope you can see through this. I'm not sure that you can. You can see where the line comes down, and that's helpful for when we're doing our paper piecing. So let's start one right from the beginning. So I pick up the fabric that I need, and I see where it belongs. If you can see here, I hope you can, that shadow. I'm going to cover that with it, and because it's a triangle, I'm going to try and put that triangle right in the center. And then because it's my first piece, I'm going to pin it. And I'm going to try to pin it where I'm not going to sew it. So I think I'll actually pin it, because I'm going to add those 2 triangles on the side first. I'll pin it up here. So the head is way out of the way. So do I have it in the right position, and do I have enough coverage? So again, I'm going to turn it around, and if you can see the light through there, you can see that I have enough. The other method to do it is to fold on that line that you're going to sew on and give it a good crease with your fingers. that gives you a line to show you that you're over and you have enough seam allowance. Then we're going to take a pink triangle and we're going to arrange it so it will go this way. So we're going to put this on here, and again, we know if we line it up with the green edge, we are going to be within our seam allowance, and we're going to have enough to do our shape there, cover that shape. So let's sew that. I have adjusted my needle and my stitch length to a little less than what I normally, so either a 2 or a 1.5. So I sew that through, and again, I love to chain piece, so we're going to chain piece this guy at the same time. So this is our center for block 3 that I've already worked on, and I just need to add those last sections. So I line it up with my seam allowance or the paper. So if this one still had its paper on, I would be, come on, sewing right on the line of the paper. But for some reason I cut that one off. Don't know why. Okay, and then this one did not sew for some reason. Let's check. I've got bobbin thread. I've got regular thread. I don't know why that didn't go. Let's try it again. That's better. It probably just was, oh, no, there's no, oh. The thread came out of the needle, so let's just rethread that, and then we'll start all over again. Just pretend none of that ever happened. Okay, so we're back to this piece, and we've put the pink on, and we've got our first piece pinned. I always pin the first piece just to hold it in place so I know that I'm sewing it. And then I will go across, and I will sew it. And if I was only doing block 3, I could chain piece the rest of mine as well. So let's do that. So, where's the other one? So the green goes right in the middle down here on this piece. So I'm going to cover it on the back and check that it covers all my points and gives me enough seam allowance. Do I need a 1/4 inch? Not necessarily in this instance, but you have to have enough seam allowance to cover your lines and also to cover that non-existent 3/4 or 1/4 inch that we don't have. So I'll take my pink triangle and line it up, and again I can fold it on that line to make sure that I have enough in the seam allowance, and I do, if you can see that line there. So we'll sew this one, and if I don't have a seam allowance on the paper, I sew back a little bit. The fabrics extend past there, so I'll show you what I mean here. So here I don't have the 1/4 inch there, but I actually started sewing here, not here. You don't have to go back and forth at the beginning or the end. It will look after itself. If you've got your small stitch length, you shouldn't have any unraveling because you're just going a little bit past. So now I'm going to fold this. I can take out my pin. So I'll fold that, give it a press. And I don't need my pin anymore because now the paper is secured with the stitching. And then I'll add my other pink triangle, and it goes this way. So again, let's fold that on the line that we're going to sew on and make sure that our green covers, which it does. So that means we can line up our pink. If the green was excessively big, we could trim it to a 1/4 inch or maybe even slightly less. It's okay here. I'm not going to worry about it. And again, I'm going to put my pink, so when I sew it, it comes out to the right spot. And again, I will start that almost a 1/4 inch off a 1/4. When I finish sewing, I'll show you that. Where do I finish sewing? I finish sewing about 2 or 3 stitches past where the line ends. So this one, the same thing, we're at the same place. We've got our pin there, that can come out now because our stitching is holding it. We'll give it a press. You can also at this point check and see what your seam allowance is. I'm happy with that. It's about a 1/4 inch, and I'm not worried yet about it being too far past this line because we can take care of that afterwards. So let's add our next pink square or triangle, and we will fold over the green. So we get our line, our next sewing line, and we see that the green is well within it. So that means that if we line the pink up with the green edge, we're going to be well within it. But I'm also going to shift that pink past the line here. So I've got about a 1/4 inch on that side. And then we sew. So block 3 looks a little complex. Ooh, where did you go? Block 3 looks a little complex, but it's not if you break it down into its parts. So here we go. We've got, again, the pink has been sewn on. We'll give it a press. And then I'll double check the seam allowance. That's okay for me right now, but we could trim off, first of all, the threads, get them out of our way, and we could trim this off as well. That little dog ear. Okay, and then the next piece I'm adding is going to be the gold. So again, I'm going to take this piece and we're going to fold it on the line where our next sewing section is. And we're going to check, and the green is just within that. So when I put the gold on, first of all, I'm going to center it, but I'm also going to bring it up just not in line with the green because I want a little bit more seam allowance. I'm going to move it up just a smidge. So it's the green is there and the gold is there, but I'm going to have a little bit more seam allowance with the gold. And sew that across. And this one, at the same spot, but I did manage to catch this corner in my stitching. Oh, I pulled it out. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that out and I'll press it and I'll make sure that, oh, it's going to be fine, I think. So again, I'm going to check, and this can come off now. So it's basically sew, press, trim, and then and then fold. So we're going to try again. We're at the gold section now. So we're going to fold over on the line there and put a nice crease on our green. And that one's a little bit better than our other one. It's a nice thing. So we can line it up right with that one. So I line it up right with the green at the back, and then I make sure that this little tail is right in the center. So when it folds up, it's right up there. And we'll sew that one. And again, I start just a little bit before and a little bit after. If you see here, that might be 1 stitch before, and this one's about 6 stitches after. I don't normally go that far, or vice versa. And then we'll press that. So you kind of get into a rhythm. So again, we've got everything there and everything is covered. And if I hold it up to the light, you can see that there's enough seam allowance on everything. Do I need to trim yet? I don't think so. Nothing needs a trim. Now when I put these guys on, the next corners, I am going to fold it again on the line. So we're just following the same procedure every time. So we fold, we check, and we can see that the pink is right here, the fold, and it's quite big on the gold. So we can take some of that gold off either now or after. I like to take it off before because that gives me, and I just ballpark it with my eyes, but you can also go over and trim it with an add a quarter ruler. That's what they're for. So this is about a 1/4 inch for me now. And what it does is it gives me a line that I can line my next piece up with. Oh, something's wrong with that piece. It's got a little bit of fluff on it. Okay, so we're going to add this one right along the line of the gold. And we're going to go a little bit above the pink because it's a bit short. And I'm going to also adjust this down so it's got enough space. It kind of is the center of that. So when it comes back, it'll cover that fully. Let's do this. So this one. So that pink piece, when it folded up, might be only 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and then we've got our other one here. So again, we'll give that a press. We'll get ready for our next piece. So we fold, trim. Oh, we got a lot to trim. Well, we have a huge seam allowance there. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's right along here, that fold line. So we've got a lot there. So we can trim that to almost half of what it is. And again, what that does, I mean, you could trim it afterwards, but I like to trim it beforehand, because what that does is it gives me a spot to put my next piece on and lines it up so I don't take too much of this piece, so when I fold it up, I'm not short. So that's why I like to trim it ahead of time. So again, I line up my piece on that seam, and I check that my diagonal are kind of in line. So when I open it, I should be at the right spot, and I should have enough to cover. So on this one especially, I'm going to show you where I start and where I end. Get rid of those little strings. I like to trim as I go, because then it's neater, tidier. Okay, so there's our next piece, and when we flip it around, you'll see that we have covered our 1/4 inch here, and we've covered our 1/4 inch there. You can flip back now and say, okay, do I need to trim that anymore? It's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. And because I've matched this corner to this corner, when I fold it over, I've got a really good seam there that I have all the coverage. This will get trimmed down before we put it in the block. But let's finish this one. And so there's a lot of blocks in this project that we're doing that have the square and a square. So this one, block 3 has a square and a square. Block 40 has a square and a square. And mostly what they are, they're either simpler or complex, so there's more pieces, or maybe something like this where there's a border and then there's more triangles. So those, as we sew the other components in block 3, these components, and finish them up, I'm also going to start block 40, and I'll start with the center, and we'll talk about a square and a square section. So we also have a square and a square with the border on the block 3. So that's already started. So I pinned this one, I sewed these two, and then I sewed these two. And on this block, you can see too, the way it lines up, the points aren't right in the corner. They're further out. So I've made it sure I've done that. And when we put it together, I will make sure that that's a line. Does it make a difference? Not a lot, but it's truer to the pattern. So again, when I'm going to add this end, you see how I line up those points so that there's enough for me to go to the corner. So this is block 3 we're still on. And that was the one I sewed earlier, but the needle wasn't threaded, so it didn't actually sew. So now we're going to be sewing, because I love to chain piece, we're going to be sewing several things all at once. So we have to finish these 2 portions, and also this portion, which I sewed earlier, and where's the other one? And then there's this one. So these are the top and bottom and the 2 side pieces. So those we will sew as we go along. And again, all my fabrics are lined up and ready for me. So if I put them in there, that should work. So we've got various different stages in all of them. Before we go on to block number 3, let's just talk about block number 3. Sorry. Before we go on to block number 40, we're going to talk about block number 3. So block number 3, this one is all finished up. It hasn't been trimmed yet into that 1/4 inch. So, but because we have the cornerstones here and here, we might as well add them with paper piecing. So we take 2, either the top or the bottom or the 2 sides, whichever one you want. They get the cornerstones, and the other ones are just the shorter pieces like this. So to do this, again, we do the same thing. We fold it. Now here we're going to see there's a big seam allowance. So we're going to trim that back again. And it's easy to follow that line. You can always go over to your cutting board and trim it. Just fold your paper back this way and then trim it and then fold it back. I now have a space to align my pink square. So I'm going to align that, and I'm going to have a few points of reference. So the first thing I'm going to align is I'm going to align it with that edge, because I know that that edge has enough seam allowance for me. I'm also going to align it so I have a 1/4 inch past here, because the paper ends before I get the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I have a 1/4 inch on this one, so that one is fine there. So it gets straddled between those two. I have enough here for seam allowance, and I have enough there for seam allowance, and we can sew it. And again, I just don't sew on the paper, I sew past the seam allowance. So because I love chain piecing, I'm going to keep working on this one, which is the center of block 3. I just need to add those 4 triangles. And pull this one out, and you will see that when we press it, we have more than enough to go around here. You could have sewn everything together and then just sewn these regularly, and then they would be a slightly different size, because I've got more than enough seam allowance on all 3 sides. So the other one, same thing. We're going to fold it on that line. Okay, that one seems to be a reasonable seam allowance, so I'm going to let that one just sit the way it is. I'm going to line up my pink right along the edge of the green, and I'm going to check that I have enough here and enough there to give me that seam allowance when I fold it back. Sew it. Sometimes I chain piece so tight that I can't get my scissors in between the 2 pieces. And this is the one I'm working on, the 3, block 3, the centerpiece. I just have to add those corners, but that's a good foil for me to put something through so I can trim this. Okay, so now this one is also trimmed up, just the way we want it. And I'll press it. So there's our pattern with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. The pink is just coming out the edge there. It's a little off here, so I could take it off, readjust it, and re-sew that one, but it's just such a tiny little amount, like 1/16. I'm not going to bother about it. So there it is. What you would do is take your ruler and put the 1/4 inch line on there and trim it. You would take your 1/4 inch ruler and put it on this line and trim it, and the 1/4 inch ruler on this line and trim it. Then I would sew it into the rest of the project, which you will see as we go along. So that is one portion of block 3, and it is your portion right up there. Oh, that way. It goes that way, sorry. So it goes that way. So when we trim it, you'll see how lovely it comes out. I guess I'll trim... No, I won't trim them yet. I'll do these while we do the center for block 40, and then I'll trim everything up together. Okay. So while I'm doing block 40, in order to have something else to piece, I will add... I lost one of my triangles. There it is. Okay. In order to have something that chain pieces, I will finish up these blocks. So bear that in mind. So the first thing we have is a green center. So I put the green as I look up over top of there. So I've got coverage over all the seam, and I give it a pin because it's the first piece. Then I go over here and see what's next. So the next is gold, 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 gold. Because my pin's going this way, I'm going to do these 2 first. So again, same thing. We fold it on the line that we're going to sew. Give it a good crease so we can see on the green where we're going to line up the gold. So the gold is going to go against the green at the top, and the point is going to be right in the center of this So when we fold it open, I think these pieces are are generous enough that we don't have to worry about it being short anywhere. Oops. So this, I've caught the head of the pin. So I'm going to sink my needle, drop my needle in, pull the pin out, and then just continue. Sometimes that happens. Okay, and then this guy can come out and get a press. And it has one more section to go. So I lift, see I'm not at the edge of the paper, but I just lift the needle, I pull that out, and I get this piece centered where I want it, and it gets sewn. And then I can clip this, and I usually clip it close to the pattern. I've got my first gold, so I will fold that back. And I usually do opposites. So the gold goes here, and if I hold it up here, you'll see that it's very generous. So we'll have to do some trimming as we go along. Okay, so fold over our next sewing line. We can add the gold to where it belongs. And we are going to center that point of the triangle there, right in the center. And a couple stitches before we hit the line and a couple stitches after are enough to secure it on our shortened seam allowance. So now we finished the center for block 3, so we'll put that to the side. It needs a trim. We'll also start doing the sides of block 3. So again, I'm going to fold that. It's pretty generous there. So when I put this one on this time, I'm not going to line it up with there. I'm going to come down a little bit because that's a pretty big seam allowance. So again, I'm going to line up that point. That's going to show, but we can trim that afterwards. So ideally everything will have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you don't have to worry. Some of the blocks with lots of pieces, however, will have, let's fold on our next sewing line, will have a lot of bulk. So that's when you may want to grade your seam after it's sewn down to maybe 1/8 of an inch. So again, I think I flipped something in there. Sometimes I can tell by the weight of the paper or the way the paper goes. I can see that something's folded over when I put it in there. Oops, and we've lost our thread again. Okay. That may be why. There was extra bulk. This machine is loves to have no bulk. It's a Pfaff Ambition 620. I quite like it. It's my newest machine, but I still got it maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. So let's just make sure that's in there. Okay, let's go back and restart that one. I like it because it has a cutter, which I never had before, and it has a well, obviously a reverse. It has some other features which I like. Needle down. You can run it just by pressing the button, which I have to say I really don't do very often because I'm afraid it'll just run off. Okay, so this is the one that we cut with the bigger seam allowance. So now that it's sewn and we know that everything works for us, we can trim that seam out. So we'll pull this down a little bit off the paper, that corner, and we're going to cut across. Okay, and maybe even a little bit more there. That will go in the garbage. And there we go. So that one, again, will get trimmed up. Put that in our pile to trim. So we have 3 pieces there for block 3 to trim up. While we're doing block 40, we can also do these side pieces and prepare them. So 2 of them have to have the gold cornerstones, and two of them will get sewn right to that block. So we might as well do those as well. And this is how I usually piece when I'm working on this project. I like the chain piecing because there's so many small pieces. So for me to have it all, first of all, ready for me to go and cut the sizes I need, have my scissors handy, I find it's the best way for me to sew. I can complete a project. And now if I'm going through a project, I usually cut two blocks up at the same time. But as we know, there's a wide variety of pieces in each piece. So sometimes you'll finish one block and you won't have any more chain piecing. So at that point, I just go and I sew, start sewing on another, like I prepare another block up like this and I start sewing on it. So sometimes I'm sewing 1.5, and sometimes I'm sewing 2 blocks at once, and sometimes I'll start 2 blocks and then I'll finish one and then I'll go and get my third one. Oh, so again, I got a little fold there when I sewed. So I will find my needle reverse sewer and just take that out and fix it. And then I can just go back, making sure that it's flat this time. Sometimes they need a press, and restitching that section. I don't have to stitch the whole line again because I only took out a little bit. Okay, so back to block 40. I've completed the row of golds to go around the center. And now before I start the next section, which is red, I'm going to go and do some trimming. So I'm going to take off these extra points. I don't need those there. It will only give me more bulk as I sew. And check this side, same thing. And I'll just check here, that's fine. And I'll check this seam, that's fine. It's a bit big. If you wanted to, if you had a lighter fabric and that green was showing through, you can just grade that down so the green is behind the gold. Okay, and then we go on to the red section. We don't trim it yet as regards to the size, because we will do that at the end. So again, we're going to start with our next sewing line. So let's make this one it. And that's the line we're going to sew our red on. And again, that's a lot of seam allowance, but let's position the red. So the fold line, it is about almost a 1/4 inch over the fold line. And we're not going to worry about the gold on the outside. Now I'm going to line that up so it's perfect. Pull that up, pull that out. And again, a few stitches outside and a few stitches inside. Okay, and that's the other one we're getting done. And I'll notice here that that's a lot of fabric in there, so let's trim that back. And that looks good. And then this one gets the pink squares again on the edge. So we fold, and that's huge, so let's trim that back a bit. We don't need all that fabric in there. And I have everything handy for what I need. So again, this one has to go on. So we have our 1/4 inch on both sides and against where we just trimmed. I hope it's not too confusing. I hope you understand that I'm doing 2 blocks. So this one, we just came out block 40 in the center. This is going to cover our whole red spot here, but look at that huge seam that we have there. So this you may have to pull back a bit, that corner, because it was stitched down. And we're just going to go across and cut. And again, if you want to cut with your ruler and your rotary cutter, you would flip this down. Okay, you would go over and cut your 1/4 inch, and then you put that back up. If you cut the paper off, which of course happens, just either tape it back or try to, I mean, I usually just tape them back, but just try to put it back so everything lines up. I'm not going to do it on purpose because that would be silly. But it is something that happens a lot when you're trimming. You forget to put the paper on the other side. So again, we've got a big seam allowance here. We're going to put this guy on just above where the fold is, about 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch, or somewhere in between. Okay, so we're going to have a lot to trim off when this comes out. Start a few stitches before the line, stitch right on the line, and a few stitches after. And that should give you enough to hold that in place. So there's our other long side. That's called a long side on block 3. We just have to add one more. Did we trim that one? I think we did. Let's just double check. Yeah, that seam is nicely trimmed. So this one, again, it's a bit bigger. So let's sew it first. Lining up our pink. So all it is repetition for paper piecing. If you want, you can watch another video of paper piecing. We are lucky that Marg figures them out for us. I don't know how she does it. She did tell me that she did take a course on it. So something I might want to explore one day and see how to do it. I have a terrible time cutting because I always want to be so thrifty that I forget to cut the, you know, I'll cut my triangles too small or something, and that's something you just have to learn. Cutting up other portions, I find it hard to wrap my head around it sometimes, but I do find it easy to do my fold, my trim if I need to. And again, if you want to trim this with your rotary cutter, we flip the paper back. We put our 1/4 inch line of a regular ruler, or if you have add a 1/4 ruler, and you trim that off. Okay. And then you line up your next piece and you stitch it on. And again, I'm just going to shift that down a bit so my diagonal is okay. So in the background, that is my man yelling at the dogs. They're all going out, but hopefully he doesn't disturb us too much. So there's that one on. So this is the one we didn't trim. We're going to trim after. So you do whatever you prefer, but don't wait to trim till the whole thing's together, because now you can't access like you can't access inside that gold, you can't access inside the pink triangles because you've sewn over it. So you have to trim as you go. Okay, so there's another one. That's 3 out of 4 done, and our 4th is in there. So let's go back to the center of block 40. So again, that's a lot, so we'll take that out. And again, if you kept sewing, I mean, if you sew on the next side, oh, let's just trim those little threads too. I like it to keep it neat, somewhat neat. Okay. So if I fold it, and then I do my next one, my next line I want to sew on, I give it a crease so I can see where the line is. Again, that's huge. What I'm also looking at though too is keeping my points well. So this will go on, and we'll trim it afterwards. I will make sure that my point is right in the center there. Let's shift it a bit that way. It's covering the seam line. Okay. So you see here, if I don't trim this section now, when it gets sewn in, I might not have that opportunity to trim it. You can, once the paper is removed, you can go back and trim, but you kind of are cutting around seams and stuff, which is, you know, you don't get it all, and then you get more bulk. And some of these blocks have so many pieces that the bulk is very hard to work with. Okay, so this is our last piece for block 3. So we're just going to put that on and line up our point. And so, and again, this one I'm starting in the seam allowance, and I'm going right off that paper into what would be a seam allowance if the paper was bigger. You can always photograph your, or print your paper so many times so you have enough around each one, but I don't like to waste paper, and I don't like to, you know, I just want to use maybe 2 pieces of paper. I have an original one that I always keep, and then I have one for playing with. Hello, my love. It's my little doggy, or my big doggy. I've got 2 dogs now. So this one, I'm just going to peel back some of the stitching on the paper so I can get that up. So if I had put this on without stitching, and then I put on this corner one here. Okay, let's pretend that's going on next. All right, now I can't pull this back to stitch it or to trim it. So make yourself a habit, either before or after. So again, our thoughts are fold first. We fold where we're going to sew. Make our crease. Check where our line is. Grab our piece that's going there and line it up. Either trim at this point or don't trim at this point. There'll be lots of people on videos that will show you to trim now, because if you trim at 1/4 inch, that gives you something to line your new piece on. I've been doing this long enough that I can ballpark it. But if you want to have it really good seams and really pretty when you take off the paper, that's the way to do it. Okay, so there is our last piece for block 3. So I'm just going to step out of the camera for a minute and trim some of these up. And you'll see how they go from this and this, okay, to something a little prettier. So let me do some of this here. Move those out of the way, and I'll just grab a cutting board. So the cutting board is, we're going to line up our lines, our pattern lines. So remember, our pattern is 6 inches, and we are at 6.5. So let's line up. You can see I'm putting my 1/4 inch on this line and my 1/4 inch on that line, and whatever's outside of those lines gets trimmed. Okay, and then we do the other 2 sides. So I usually do it 2 sides at a time, and again I line up a 1/4 inch at the top and a 1/4 inch on the line of the pattern and trim off what's left. Okay, so now you've gone from this from that. So you see how it all lines up. When you sew it, I'm just going to get that thread out of there. Trim that. So when you sew it, your 1/4 inch, you're going to see it's going to be beautiful there. And then the outside of your edge of your quilt, or is it the other way around? It's the other way around, right? So the outside of your edge has a 1/4 inch. So when you join the blocks to your sashing, it'll be perfect. And when you do your 1/4 inch here, it'll be perfect. So let's just trim up the rest of that. Here's our center. And our center, because I didn't cut it big enough, for some reason I cut my center this way. It should have been that whole section. So how do I know what to cut it at? So I'm going to put it on here and measure. So that's 3 by 3. So I have to cut it at 3.5. So I will line it up, and my 3, so half of 3.5 is 1 3/8, I believe. No, 5/8. So I'm going to line that up with my center here, and I'm going to trim it then flip it and trim the other side. And mostly all I'm trimming off is are those sort of dog ears, I call them. So we've got that. We've got this piece to go this way. And I will trim up the next one. So again, 2 sides at once, the top and one of the sides. So they might look like a dog's breakfast at first, but once they're trimmed, you'll be so pleased with your efforts. And the best thing, of course, of paper piecing is you will have your beautiful points. So again, if we just look at these 3 that I've done, they're all set to go together. So the sides will go, the shorter pieces will go on either side, and then the longer pieces will go top and bottom. So instead of finishing up that while you're being totally bored on camera by me, we'll just finish up block 40 a little bit more. So at this point I have enough to chain piece because I've got those the sides to do. I've got to put a corner on each side. So I will, okay, remember where we were before? I got to trim that one off. Now, if I didn't have anything else to do on block 40, I would go cut the fabric for my next block and I'd work on it. So again, we've got the 4 greens to go around the outside. And unlike the previous block, I have a 1/4 inch seam that I left on there. So I will sew from one end. I'll show you that in a second. So these are our side pieces. We've got 2 short ones, just like in the previous block, except these only have 1 piece as opposed to 1,000 pieces that block 3 had. So here we've got, you see here, this is our 1/4 inch. So the center of block 40, I added a 1/4 inch to the center before I cut it out. And your pieces, let's see if we need to trim that seam a little bit. Let's take out that little bit of red, and the rest is okay. We'll just take a bit of that green. So you'll see how pristine your points are everywhere. So we'll do, and I tend to do it this way when I'm doing a square and a square and a square. I will add one side, the other side, and then the other 2 sides. So we're almost done. Okay. So we have one side done, or the top and bottom, and we just have to add the other one and our other cornerstones and finish our center. And we'll pull that out and just have a look. So again, if you need more help, just Google paper piecing. But once you get used to it, it's, again, very simple. You do your press, you do your stitch, you do your trimming, you do your press. So it's a good rhythm to get into. And I highly recommend the chain piecing, because then you just move through quicker once you've got get down what you're doing. And I think that's all we have to just talk about. So that's 3 and 40, block 3 and 40. I will post this, and it's a super long one. It's probably the longest one I've shot so far, but it shows you the paper piecing more step by step. Thank you.